Okay, we're recording. Great. Okay. So the enhanced PYP transitioning 2020, 2021. This originally said 2019 to 2021, but we did not start in 2019, so might as well just call it 2020. So there have been some, I feel like okay, yeah. So there's been a lot of philosophical changes as well as improvements to the PYP program. Next year, which I already said, we're gonna get to begin our self-study process again in December. And right now I'm not really sure if that's gonna be pushed back since the dismissal and just everything going on with COVID and stuff. I'm sure there might be some backups as far as evaluation processes go. So we'll have to just see, but right now we're scheduled to start in December. And so we're gonna evaluate ourselves as well as be evaluated off of this new framework, the enhanced PYP. And a lot of it's the same, but there's definitely some noticeable bigger differences that I wanted to call out to all of you and share with you and open the dialogue about IB at our school. And the reason the IB made these changes is because they believe that it's better for students, easier for teachers, and more flexible for schools. No? Okay. So agency is sort of this new big idea, and it's the idea of voice, choice, and ownership. I think of it as students being actively involved in their learning, not the traditional teacher to student structure where the teacher's doing the learning to the students. So we want the students to be accountable and held to high expectations and have high expectations for themselves. We want them to take responsibility for their learning. I recently read the term self-regulated learning and thought of this in the planners. And thought of this, thought of the idea of agency, sorry. So then in the planners, agency, there's a different section for this. So you guys have seen that new template a little bit as we've been planning this year, where we're gonna be sort of coming up with ideas of how to support student agency in our units of inquiry. So some examples of agency, because I think it's been a hard thing to define as far as when I've met with the IB coordinators or been to different trainings. It's sort of been, oh, sorry, Anne wants to let in. How do I do this? Participants? Oh, yeah, there she is. Sorry. Okay. How do I go back? Okay. That's okay. Okay. Struggling. Hold on. Okay. So these are different examples of agency. So setting goals, initiating action towards those goals or other things in their learning. And yeah. Okay. So the next thing that's another big element of the PYP is the collaborative planning process. So I think what's important to remember about this, because I think sometimes, since it's just me sharing and not everybody meets with me or has collaborative planning with me, this also applies to other people who are meeting collaboratively as well. So if you're meeting with other specialists or Christian or Anne or whoever, it's just that it's important to know that the IB values collaboration and prioritizes the collaboration in our school. So another thing more PYP focused and more focused on our POI is there are different templates out there of how we're going to plan things. So you guys have seen the new planner a little bit. We haven't really gone through it. So our district made that one sort of based off of what the IB came up with. And there's other ones out there for specialists and grade levels as well to use. And and then the change with planning the POI is that it can be more flexible. So that means like planners can overlap or go all year. The lines of inquiry can be more broad. Right now, they're pretty standards based for the most part. So they can kind of be a little more overarching. And for single subjects, teachers, this used to kind of be like a point of contention or disagreement. Like nobody was on the same page as it, especially with the topic of platooning. The PYP has sort of like officially said they're okay with people teaching just single subjects, and then sort of like finding transdisciplinarity within that. And then also, in the PYP and the new standards and practices, they talk about how professional development should be developed for teachers and how it should sort of be like designed collaboratively. And later I'm going to kind of talk about design thinking and design process because that gets brought up as well in the enhanced PYP. So I feel like collaborative planning is actually something our school's already doing really well. So this doesn't really have a ton of changes for us. Okay. Okay, so approaches to learning used to be called transdisciplinary skills. And we've started calling them approaches to learning at our school and been calling them that for a while. So I don't know, some of you might be thinking transdisciplinary skills, but maybe some of you are like, I didn't know there was a change. So these skills support students in becoming self-regulated learners. And teachers should provide implicit and explicit opportunities and plan for students to develop these skills. So this is kind of like the learning how to learn part of the PYP, and the IB believes it's integral to a student's education and ultimately inquiry based and supports student agency. And approaches to learning should be embedded in authentic experiences, which has definitely made me think of how to embed this into our applied learning. And then also each of these words, so communication or communication skills, research skills, self-management skills, social skills, thinking skills, you all probably know this because we've planned and picked sort of those more specific sub-skills, but the teachers determine the importance and context of these and how we create learning activities and goals to meet these skills or use these skills. And it's not required to use all of them. There's so many, especially in the new template in Atlas, it's sort of overwhelming. So I just want to let you know, you don't have to use all of the skills. You just determine which ones make sense for your units of inquiry. Okay. Okay. So the early learner. So this framework has changed a little bit as far as what the IB considers the early learner. In the past, the IB really just considered the early learner to be preschoolers. They've extended that up to age 6. So really that goes into first grade a bit. And they consider it to be authentic opportunities to focus on developmental opportunities, kind of repetitive there, sorry. And then play involves choice, promotes agency, opportunity to inquire into important concepts, and personal interests. Support children's development of cognitive, social, emotional, and physical. And then they believe play is a driver for inquiry. And then the parts of the development and sort of in detail is the receptive and cognitive abilities. So focusing on listening, memory, attention, thinking, representational abilities, symbolic systems, oral and written, drawing, mathematic to represent meaning, relational abilities. So play with peers, share, taking turns, showing respect. So that's the early learner. And I think that's a little different just because of that big emphasis on play, and just the environment as well. Okay. So exhibition is pretty different. I was reading about it a little bit more, trying to understand, because it just seems super flexible. So I wrote flexible time frame, but sorry, I'll just read what I already kind of had come up with, and then I'll go into the other thoughts I had. So exhibition is still a culminating and collaborative learning experience of the PYP. And students will still explore an issue opportunity of personal significance, document it, and share it. And it's supposed to be an authentic experience. There's varied degrees of student involvement in the planning and implementation of exhibition. So I thought that was a little bit different because typically students aren't involved in actually planning the exhibition. So student initiated is the same. Developing the, their lines of inquiry and concepts and topic is still the same. So they came up with those this year and kind of decided what they were going to research and the format of that. What's a little bit different this year is that exhibition student or not this year, but with the enhanced PYP, is that it's student designed. So they're going to come up with their own learning goals and success criteria and co-design strategies and tools with teachers and mentors to document and self-assess their success and learning. It's still supposed to be a collaborative process, and I feel like that used to be a little bit more rigid, but now, the IB, I think, recognizes the diverse needs of our students and our population, and that some students can do it independently or have a different format. So it doesn't have to be in groups. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second. And I feel like I was sharing a lot of information, like rapid fire. So I just tried to figure out how to, I don't know if it's saved for this, to do breakout rooms, and just sort of discuss any like reaction or thought you had to anything you heard so far, something that's different or something that's the same, or something you think will be hard to do or easy to do or change in your classroom. I'm not seeing the breakout room thing, and I thought I saved that setting. Does anyone just want to like call out, I guess, then, since I can't do that?
Definitely like the flexibility. Sounds like they're loosening up some of the expectations, the overarching, because that's what we had talked about in some of the NGSS with the science, is that you can have an overarching that kind of affects all of the planners throughout the year. So, I mean, I think that some of that flexibility will be nice.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think about like certain people's standards and how certain concepts come up all year long and would work to have kind of throughout, like kindergarten's doing that right now, with their civic standards. So they're being risk takers. And I think that part of it has been going really well, like having that going all year. And then like figuring out where everything kind of fits underneath that umbrella. So that's been kind of cool to see. Anyone else want to share?
I think it's fun. I don't know. I have my mask on. I think it's fun that they can do it individually, more like a passion project. Like at MYP, they're working on something that they're curious about.
Yeah. And I also think, like, I don't remember who it was, but a couple years ago, there was just like one kid who just didn't work well with anybody. And it just kind of ended up working better to let that kid sort of pursue what they wanted to pursue, and also their academic needs were really high. Like they needed a lot of support, more so than the other kids in that group. So I think it can be another way to differentiate a little more. I don't know if that was with.
Is it also, is the exhibition so they can still do it in groups? If they want, yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I agree. I'll just say that it sounds more flexible and not so rigid. I feel like in the past, it felt like a lot of the IB things were kind of cut and dry. So just like, you know, the early learner, those grades, they may choose 4 to 6 units. With execution, they may work in small groups. With the approaches to learning, it said schools may identify their own. So I appreciate the changes. I feel like it's allowing schools a little more autonomy to make decisions that feel right for their kids and their school. So I think I appreciate the shifts.
Yeah, I think it's helpful too because just every school is so different. So like our interpretations and how it applies in our settings is going to be different than, you know, a school in England or somewhere else. And I think it'll be helpful with evaluation too, because it won't be like tiny slaps on the wrist for things that seem kind of ridiculous. But yeah. Cool. Okay. I'm gonna keep chugging along. If any questions or anything pop in your head, feel free to write them in the chat. Yeah. Okay. Share my screen again. Okay. All right. So that's exhibition. I even put a picture of our kids this year in. Okay. So the learner profile is the same 10 learner attributes. And this is sort of something that should be embedded into everything in our curriculum, in interactions in all spaces and outside experiences, in school events or like presentations, you know, like those group morning meetings we have, and at home and in community. So it's something that we want to have families know about and our community know about as well. And it's the learner profile should be valued, celebrated, demonstrated, developed, and appreciated. So sort of recognizing that in our students and calling it out. And then it said, and then some of the questions I sort of had for us to think about with the learner profile, because I feel like in some ways it could kind of have a revival a little bit, because it was such a touchstone and so important to the IB. And it's, yeah, so I just said, how does it progress and look different at different ages? How do we document development of the learner profile in students? How does it connect to our learning goals and assessments? How can we create opportunities to recognize students demonstrating the learner profile in action or in learning? So that was some of the, oh, I have like a new participant, admit. Okay. Okay. And then also on the bottom of the slide, you'll see I wrote attitudes are included in descriptions of learner profile attributes. So those have gone away, I guess is sort of how I phrase that. To other people, they're not like gone away sounds very final, but they're embedded into the learner profile because I feel like they are very similar and they were probably a bit repetitive, to be honest. So you don't need to post your attitudes anymore if you don't want to. Okay. Action. So action should connect to student agency and the learner profile. All units of inquiry should be guiding students to action, but also it can be as simple as changing attitude, consideration, or a plan for the future, demonstrating responsibility, respect of self, others, and environment, commitment to leading or participating in a youth advocacy group, engaged in school decision making, express support of community, local, or global decision making. And then these were some of the new categories that that weren't really mentioned before in action, but they're advocacy, social justice, social entrepreneurship, lifestyle choices, and global citizenship. I feel like these words sort of sound intimidating, but when you break it down to what it actually can look like at a kindergarten or in the elementary school, it's not as big and scary as those words probably sound. And also at the top it says student initiated action. I think there were different, when I was reading, there's student initiated, teacher guided, and then like different levels in between. I think honestly, like we can sort of scaffold that. Like I think in kindergarten, there's not always going to be student initiated action with every single planner. And I feel like we feel that sometimes when we're in our reflection meetings and at the end it's like, oh, did any kids take action? And then we're trying to think of things. So instead of sort of like it being an afterthought, like it's sort of a goal to be guiding kids to action throughout the unit of inquiry. And I feel like, again, like action is a great like other piece that could fit really well with applied learning too. Okay. Concepts. Okay, yeah, so now there's only 7 because reflection is going to be like fully embedded in everything with throughout the unit of inquiry. So we don't just want you to have reflection in 1 or 2 of your planners. You're going to be reflecting in every single planner. So there's 7: form, function, perspective, connection, responsibility, causation, and change. Assessment. I feel like okay. Oh yeah, and also just back on the reflection piece, because I just saw a note I wrote about this. There's also a piece about students reflecting, and this is in the planner. So like what reflections did students have? And typically we've had students, again, just reflect at the end of a planner. But instead of that, it should be done throughout. And some of the conversations I've had around how the reflection should look throughout a unit of inquiry is like, it can be as simple as using Seesaw or us coming up with a little template throughout to sort of meet that need, but just giving kids an opportunity to reflect and think about their learning. So that'll probably be something we can think about together. But I liked the idea of Seesaw because it's so user-friendly and like can capture kids' ideas. Okay. Assessment. So less focus and requirements on summatives. Use backward design and forward. So having a goal, learning goal or target. IB always says learning goal. Our district says learning target. So, oh well. That's just, I guess, so when I see goal, I just think target. And then assessment, and then what activities will fit that assessment. So more emphasis on formative assessment, peer and self-assessment, and then portfolio documents progress and include regular reflection. So similar to what we've been doing, but another thing I read that had to do with assessment was just, since we've been focusing so much on learning targets, that stuck out to me was just how learning goals, like our ultimate goal is to sort of co-construct learning targets with students and co-construct success criteria, or at least that's what the IB says. And then not only are we assessing the outcomes that students produce, but also assessing the process. So I thought that was important to call out as well. Okay, language. So Multilingualism is encouraged and supported. Language is embedded to support a school culture of language learning and international mindedness. So another thing that came up at the training I went to this past fall was sort of, I don't know if it's a requirement or encouraged, but trying to build a language portfolio for students. So like sending out a survey to families and seeing where their students are at or what they speak at home or what their experiences have been, and then including progress at school. So this might just look like adding some of that to our current portfolios. Yes. So sorry, I'm just reading a question. And it says, do they provide reflection tools ideas? And I think there probably are. I just haven't, they actually have a lot more templates and examples, which has been cool because I think that has made things a little bit more user friendly to see examples, or at least for me as a learner, seeing examples is helpful. So yes, but I don't have them on me in this presentation right now. Okay, let's see. Oh, another question. Okay, yeah, so someone else said, we send home a language survey to all students, so we should have information about additional languages spoken at home. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I feel like people are, and I talked to Susan about this at some point in the year, how she already had like sent home a survey this year too. So maybe just adding some of that documentation to their regular portfolio, so it's not an entire separate thing. This also might be more of a focus for dual language schools, because I know there are a lot of schools that are IB and dual language schools. So more to come on that, honestly. I feel like all the IB coordinators were like a little bit unsure of what the expectation was around language portfolios. So don't worry about that yet. Okay. Okay, so leadership. So the big thing that I was reading about was establishing a shared purpose, and then also sharing that work, not just a leader, like one person. I feel like a lot of what Christian has sort of been saying, like it's not just one person, it's like all of us working together. Tried to pick a good picture for this, but so the principal and PYPC guide and support implementation of the PYP in the school. The pedagogical leadership team supports this implementation and like PD development and having excellent curriculum. And then also, so I feel like it's already sort of things that we're doing. So it says students, teachers, and members of the learning community take on formal and informal leadership roles to discover new ways to reach shared aspirations together and promote and encourage student agency. The student agency piece at the end, I felt like also stood out to me because we as teachers can try to support more student leadership opportunities. And this was something I kept reading. I was like, I don't know if there's like a ton of those yet at BRAC, but I feel like there could be like more opportunities for student leadership at our school. Okay, it's leadership. Well, maybe we should stop and pause for a sec because we talked about it a lot again. Okay, so is there anything that comes to mind so far? I talked about leadership, assessment, language, concepts, reflection, action, and the learner profile. All big pieces. Any thoughts that come to mind? Something that, I don't know, might be challenging or exciting? It's hard in a whole group. It's like bad teaching practices right now on my part.
Keep jumping since we're not fighting to do it. I think you're right. I think we've struggled a little bit with how to really identify and embed meaningful student leadership opportunities. So I think that's definitely an area, an exciting area to grow. And then I also appreciated what you said about how, or the question that you posed of how might we recognize kids more for the learner profiles. So I think those are both exciting areas to think about how we can kind of grow in those two areas.
Yeah, nice. Thanks for sharing. Anyone else? Kelly, are you raising your hand? No. Okay. All right, I'll keep rolling because I do have a scavenger hunt at the end, which is going to be more of an independent activity. So I want to leave you guys time for that. But I just have a few more slides to share. All right. Okay. Oh, another participant, perhaps. Admit. Oh, she might have gotten kicked out. Okay. All right, so leadership, talked about that. So technology also was brought up. I feel like this wasn't really an important factor in the past in the IB and in like making the PYP happen. But they sort of call out the importance of it and learning through technology and integration of it and sort of how that supports 21st century skills and learning. So I put some great pictures of our kids in there. Okay, and then I also included this. I thought this was really cool that they included a design cycle in their new documents and how like design-based learning is inquiry learning. And then these were sort of the steps they went through in the design process. Obviously there's tons of, like this is a different one, tons of design cycles and processes out there, or design thinking. So they have discovery, interpretation, ideation, experimentation, and evolution. So I think I just wanted to include this because it was sort of affirming to me with having STEM is not a completely different ideology than being an IB school. Like they fit together really well, actually. Okay, learning environments. So schools create flexible, inviting, and intentional learning spaces that support agency, inquiry, physical, and emotional well-being. So there might be multiple spaces that are built, natural, outdoor, indoor, formal, or informal. So just having a variation, sort of going with that flexible piece. And I loved that they included the outdoor on that and natural, since we've been kind of talking about that outdoor piece of applied learning. So I thought that was pretty cool because there were a lot of, another affirming thing, I think. And also so many people's classrooms, I feel like, are definitely flexible spaces. So that was great too. Policies. So there are some different policies. You guys probably remember, for whoever was at Breck L, when we did our last self-study, we had to write or rewrite some of our policies, and we'll probably have to do that again. There's some new ones. One that's child protection, admission, access, and then so admission access, that I don't think that really applies to us since we're a public school. So we probably just have to come up with some sort of statement about that. And then academic integrity, and our collaborative process. And then we already have language assessment. Maybe we do have these admission and inclusion. I don't know. So yeah, we have to look at our policies and revise and create some new ones based on sort of what policies are required by the IB. Yeah, but I don't think that'll be too bad. And then this sort of just is a visual that breaks it down into the different pieces. I mentioned this before, the learner, learning and teaching, and the learning community. Yeah, so you guys are welcome to come back. I'll share this slideshow with you and look at this more if you would like to. And then the next steps, which I wrote these in February, thinking I was going to have tons of time with you guys and I don't know. We'll see. I guess we just don't know yet with everything, but begin using the new planner. I would love to do a book study, maybe like a Google Classroom of the learning and teaching in the fall. That's a hope. Create and revise policies. I already kind of said that in the last slide. Revise essential agreements about the PYP classroom. We had that, right? That was shared this fall when we went over all of our essential agreements for different content areas. And we also talked about it for the PYP. These are definitely going to have to be revised since there's all these different components that have sort of been added or changed. Learner profile revival. So maybe having, this was sort of ideas with other IB coordinators, but monthly focus with students, staff, and assembly. So trying to maybe kind of bring that back a little bit. We are going to revise our action plan. Every standard and practice requires an action, which is kind of a lot. So that'll be awesome during our self-study to work on. I actually already started that a little bit because our old action plan was aligned with the old standards and practices. But I've started trying to kind of transition it to the new standards and practices and which like recommendations and matters to be addressed fit with the new standards and practices, if that makes sense. And then continue to update our POI and revise units with new science standards. So we've already been doing that, but we are going to do 4th grade next year, hopefully, and then 5th grade the following year. So we're getting there. And then work in collaborative teams to gradually implement the enhancements and officially begin self-study in December 2020. Yay. And again, that date might change. I'll keep you guys posted. So the independent activity is the scavenger hunt. That's linked here, Learning Ahead. So I'll make sure I share this with you. And again, I wrote this when we were going to be in school. So it says work collaboratively with 1 or 2 others or work independently. I would say probably work independently unless you really don't want to. You definitely can work with a friend. And then you'll go to this website and log in and go to the Program Resource Center and follow the directions on the scavenger hunt to explore the Resource Center. So let me show you this really quick. We'll only have 15 minutes. So I don't expect you to finish all of it, but maybe just get as much done as you can in 15 minutes or just explore the Program Resource Center a little bit. So this is what the scavenger hunt looks like. And I will share the slideshow with you right now before I forget. Okay. I'm going to stop my share. Okay. Any questions? That was kind of a quick explanation of the scavenger hunt, but it kind of guides you through step by step. So
are you bringing us back together, Chloe?
Yeah. Oh, at the end?
Yeah. Or are we just scavenging?
You're just scavenging on you. I don't know. I mean, I guess we could get back together at 2. What do you think? I guess I didn't think about that because I was like, oh, they might not get done with the scavenger hunt. So they might be working on that the whole time. I mean, I'm hoping I could sort of follow up with this if we have another PLG. We could talk about the scavenger hunt and what people found, but I don't know. Kelly?
I had a clarification question. So the email that went out to the whole district from Pater, I think, right? About oh, I froze. You can maybe hear me.
I can still hear you.
Am I back? Eh.
I can.
That's been all day. Okay. The email about the team or the task force or something. Is there any talk of the district getting rid of IB, or I couldn't tell from the email what exactly?
I know. Yeah, agreed. I feel like it's been a little confusing because it's a task force sort of like assessing the efficacy and like the IB program. So I think like how to make it better or how or what our next steps are. So I think, I don't know, I just filled out a survey, I think, for like a separate group the other day of what it should look like. I think the coordinators honestly are kind of in the dark about that. So I'm confused where it's coming from. So maybe there's been feedback like admin level that we haven't heard, but I would imagine it would be hard to just get rid of it since there's no backup plan for social studies or science curriculum. But
I wonder, just as a high school parent, that might be coming from the DP program.
okay.
So they're not having the volume of kids interested in the DP program, and therefore a lot of providing those classes for that program is getting to be pretty weighty for teachers. So I think that's where possibly, Kelly, that's coming from. And that's just my gleaning as a parent, and feedback from my own daughters on a lot of people are steering clear of DP. They were trying to push it, but a lot of kids are going to the CMC classes and the AP classes instead of the DP program. So it could be that we'll be IB, but maybe the high school DP might be what they're assessing. Just a guess more than anything. Not that I'm in the know.
No, yeah, I mean, I have no idea.
I would just say from a principal perspective, I think it gets brought up occasionally just because I think just what we're doing right now, right? I think as schools, we sort of wonder how much focus to put on it. Is it, what's the permanence of IB? I think something that's come up sometimes has been the cost. But when you really look at the cost for the district, it's really not that significant. I want to say it's like, I don't know, maybe 30 grand, which at the end of the day isn't even one FTE for the entire district. And so I think they've tried to sort of weigh the benefit to the cost. So I would say, Leah, I think it's kind of an annual thing that gets brought up. But I don't think, for sure, not for next year. I don't think we're going to just be done with it. I think there's too much buy-in to it. I think there's too many people that really value it, and it is a big part of our identity. But I think, that's always our question, right? Is like, do we go all in if we're really, if that commitment is limited? But I would say for sure, it hasn't been brought up enough, at least for next year, that there's no reason to not just keep chugging on.
Yeah. And I think, that's part of this task force is, like, I think that's also been a discussion among IB coordinators is like, some frustration, I think, sometimes with just like, we're an IB school, but it doesn't feel like a priority from the district a little bit. Like a lot of different initiatives are happening, but none of them are connected in like, or at least they don't make the connection or call out the connection to IB. So I think like this is part of the reason is like, okay, so if we're IB, then how can we actually do this? I think that's part of it. Or if nobody wants to do it, then we need to take a closer look. So I think, there's definitely both ends of that spectrum, I guess. So anyway, the scavenger hunt is just to get you into the program resource center. Before we were dismissed, I had a lot of grade level teams make sure they could sign up and get a login for it. I will get logged in because I have to approve people as members of our school. And you have to sign up with a personal email. So it's not the most intuitive sign up, but go ahead and try and start that. We really only have like 9 minutes now, so maybe maybe our scavenger hunt is just getting signed up. But
I think that sounds good, Chloe.
okay. Go ahead and sign yourself up and email me if you have problems, and then that's it for today.
I hope everyone's doing okay. I know it's our first PLC. Chloe, thank you. It's our first PLC. It's not easy to do with everyone just staring at you and with like no human
I
interaction.
know. I was really nervous actually. I'm like, this is gonna be weird doing it as a Zoom.
Thank you for being brave. Thank you for doing it. I think since it is Friday afternoon, it gets signed in. If you feel like going and doing the scavenger, do it. Otherwise, we can probably find another time to keep it.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Chloe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm doing okay. Mandy, I see you are in your classroom.
Oh my gosh. There's just no way. I am ready. Oh man.
You have a jacket on. I've heard it's hot.
It's cold in here.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they adjusted it then, Ben Ainsley. We were talking this morning about how it's been hot in there.
Maybe it's because I'm sitting still now.
Well, have a good day, everyone. Happy Friday. Thank you so much, Chloe.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, Chloe.
Bye.